Now let's talk about some of the modern saints, those who are not part of the Middle Ages. And I'm going to start now in Spain, where, in the 1500s, 16th century, in Spain, I mean, some of the saints are quite inspiring. We have here Saint Teresa of Avila. She's a Carmelite nun. You probably know her. And here's what she says about creation, about God. One day I saw how the Lord is found in all creatures. The comparison came to me of a sponge that is completely drenched in water. Now, this whole idea is simply to say that God is life. So where we find life, there is, this beginning of presence of God. Is it the whole presence of God? Obviously not. God is way beyond that. But that everything has a part of sacredness there. It's an amazing analogy to talk about the immanence of God. Saint John of the Cross, again in Spain, this monk and mystic preferred contemplation to intellectual analysis, which is kind of funny because he wrote a lot. But here's how he explains it, and I think it's really interesting to learn this from him. The fly that lands on honey can no longer fly, and the soul that thinks too much is no longer free for contemplation. He often prayed outdoor, surrounded by nature. So, what does this mean? Because it's pretty deep. He's saying that, one way to get closer to God, one way to answer our existential questions, one way to deepen our spiritual life is to go in nature and contemplate. I like to say, look at the brushstrokes from the artist, the brushstrokes in the art piece to get to know the artist. So when your mind is completely free and you're contemplating, you get to understand things about existence. That's one of the ways Jesus was able to get all these parables from how nature works. But if you go somewhere and your mind is cluttered with so many things, or that you think that praying is constantly repeating some things or constantly trying to concentrate on something, that's not it. He's teaching us that we shouldn't act like a fly who finally gets on honey, stopping to fly. He said, no, we're supposed to be flying. Let the spirit soar through contemplation. Saint Francis de Sales, he's from Switzerland. He was the Bishop of Geneva. Once he was invited in Belley, and the bishop wanted to hold a feast for him with fresh deer on the table. What does that mean? So a deer was brought in the orchard, and many people gathered to see the hunt. Looking through the window, he squirmed while the deer ran for his life and was killed. He cried. At the table, he could not eat and said, "What I have seen today is like hell itself." Saint Martin de Porres in Peru. So this Dominican lay helper, now just a word on that. Obviously you have Dominican friars, but then they can decide for certain reasons that, a person is not learned enough, or other reasons. And in this case, it was, let's say it straight, clearly racism. They didn't want him to be part of the friars. So they said, okay, yeah, sure, you want to be with us, but you're going to be a lay helper, not one of the friars. But I'll continue. Today he's honored by the Dominicans, but back then it didn't work so well. This Dominican lay helper had a remarkable rapport with animals. His charity extended to beasts of the field and even to the vermin in the kitchen. He would excuse the raids of mice and rats on the grounds that they were underfed. He kept stray cats and dogs at his sister's house. I think his sister was a saint as well, to have kept all of those, thanks to him. We have a nice picture of him, very, very colorful. So thank you, Saint Martin. And Saint Cateri Tekakwitha. It was in the forest, among the trees and the stillness, that the Great Spirit spoke to her heart. All of nature spoke to her of the Creator, and she knew peace. Being in harmony with all creation was a native value she had learned from a young age. I like one of the stories from her that said, it says that she would go to the mission, and there was a little chapel made of wood. And she would go to Mass, and she would participate in Mass, and she would be very, prayerful. But she was not able to fully experience the presence of God, stuck between four walls. She would always come back out and continue and finish her prayer outside, often near a tree. Okay, so I think that says a lot. And she can teach us a lot about God and in relation to nature, that it's this awe of looking at nature and its vastness, that we start to experience the vastness of God. We call her the lily of the Mohawk. And yeah, let's just take that example of vastness. So here's a question. After Cateri Tekakwitha, I cannot find any other saints. The Church has not recognized men or women in their relationship to nature. Why is that? What happened? Well, I'll just leave that question open. You'll get the answer soon in the next lecture.